help women, save lives, and peacefully end abortion where you live.
I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired.
You were serious about that?
Be inspired to change hearts and minds by joining over 1 million volunteers taking part in the global movement happening in your neighborhood.
She says, pray that I can get through this abortion. And I said, oh, no. So she went ahead and went into the abortion clinic. And she just came out. She told us, I'm not going to get the abortion. We just had a baby saved. We had a baby saved in Memphis today. Praise the Lord.
This is the 40 Days for Life podcast with your host, Sean Carney.
Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the 40 Days for Life podcast. I'm Sean Carney, the president of 40 Days for Life, and your host for this podcast, which is dedicated to helping you end abortion where you live. Hamas and abortion. That is the topic of today, and how the war in the Holy Land is a reflection of the culture war going on here, and also what it means for us and who's on whose side and why. So we will break that down for you. A little disclaimer before we get into this intense topic, and we will cover Planned Parenthood's shameful reaction. If you have not seen that, we will show it to you. It is unbelievable what they're doing. So we will get to that later. But a disclaimer, obviously every day something is happening in this war. And so we are guaranteed to be dated. So we're not going to comment on a lot of the details about what has happened or not happened the day that we're recording this, or the last few days, because it'll be gone or irrelevant in 24 hours or 5 hours. So we will not be getting into that. But we are going to talk about how this is probably coming up in your workplace or your family, of how it relates to our culture war, and specifically to abortion. So we will be covering that, and there is a lot to cover. By the way, in the midst of, praise God, the largest 40 Days for Life campaign ever, 681 cities. We continue to get so many great stories. Last week, if you did not see it, we sent out the video of Joan, our 92-year-old volunteer who's been going out from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. every single day. Let us know that she was retiring from the sidewalk, deservedly so. So we did a tribute to her. If you want to look down, if you're watching the podcast on YouTube, you can see that video that we sent out if you want some good news. Not that we're not going to cover good news in this. There is good news. There's just very little. Most of it is bad news and a heavy topic today. So someone who is not a heavy topic ever, very lighthearted and wise in times of war and conflict, and that is Mr. Steve Carlin, who joins us from Madison, Wisconsin. Steve, how are you?
Hey, Sean, I'm doing great. Heavy topic, and I don't know. It's every week, as I say, you manage to amaze me with your intro of me, and wise in times of war, another phrase I never thought would be used to describe yours truly.
I didn't either, but it came to me, and I saw it as divine revelation. I think you would have made a great general. You'd have made a great colonel. We've had many intense situations around 40 Days for Life. You always offer a lot of wisdom, and you're you I will say this, and I mean it, you, not that I haven't meant everything that I've said about you, you have great judgment. You've always had good judgment since you arrived at 40 Days. So that's very important, because we have to judge a lot of weird stuff in the work that we get to do.
We do. The persecution that we see, the legal issues, a lot of different things come up, and those are the biggest challenges. Filling the vigil schedules and finding volunteers is challenging, but it's not kind of those difficult moments that you or I or our leaders find themselves in, and kind of like heat of the moment type of things where you've got to make a call on the best way to keep everybody safe and keep everybody law abiding. But thanks be to God, we continue to operate in this post-Roe world. The persecution remains high, and yet so far the Lord has continued to bless our volunteers with safety and the ability to make good decisions that keep their volunteers safe. So praise be to God for that.
Yeah, and that's the mission has expanded. It's growing. The demand for 40 Days for Life is at an all-time high. We can't say that enough. And so thank you to our supporters and our donors. We normally don't do that on the podcast, but just thank you to those of y'all who have supported this work, especially this fall, because we need it. We have spent more money than ever on our leaders because they need it and they need the support, and it's working. It's working, certainly in a post-Roe world, as the demand for 40 Days for Life and 40 Days for Life University is an all-time high, and the donors allow us to meet that demand. So thank you to them. Steve, as you know, we're in the middle, when is this coming out? Yeah, we're about to wrap up October. Steve, what happens is we hit November and it's like, actually it's Christmas now for a lot of people. You see Christmas decorations and stuff. So Christmas we will approach this with caution because you and I have a whole Christmas banter that we like to carry on for 2 months. But before we get to November, what I like about early Christmas, okay, because I dislike more than I like. But the only thing that I like is it is the return of Michael Bublé, one of my favorite singers. And his Christmas album, I guess it's sold like 1 billion copies or something, but he became kind of Mr. Christmas. All his other music is awesome, by the way, but people just won't acknowledge that he exists until November 1st. It's very weird.
It's like Kenny G. There's a handful of guys that you just don't hear of unless it's Christmas music.
Yeah, Kenny G. And then who's the guy? He's great. He's in Independence Day. He's from New Orleans.
Not Randy
Harry
Quaid.
Harry Connick Jr.
Okay, yeah.
Harry Connick Jr. Yeah, I don't even know if you've seen Independence Day. But yeah, he's another one. He comes into the seasons. But today, before we get into this heavy topic, Steve and I recognize that we have kind of bantered or mentioned country music and the new country. Steve, you pointed out to me that John Party had released the first #1 hit in like 20 years that had a fiddle in it. Is that right?
I think it was like 12 years or something, but way too long for country music to go a #1 hit without the fiddle in it. I'm a big fiddle guy, Sean. I played numerous instruments. Not one of them was the fiddle, but that is my favorite instrument. I think it is beautiful, and God bless John Party for bringing it back to Nashville.
Me too. And I saw George Strait, as it's been well documented, for my 40th birthday last year with Mary Lisa, and he's got a fiddle in nearly every song. It's my favorite instrument too. And if you're going to play in Texas, you got to have a fiddle in the band. So some people don't know who these people are, John Party and a few others, but the new country is like old school. It's great. It's a reversion back. It's a little bit more back to country music's roots, which is your woman leaves you, you have a drinking problem, you lost your job, your truck's broke, your dog's the only faithful thing that you have, all the good themes that, of course, come from old Irish folk music. That's why country music's so depressing, because it came from Ireland. That's why I love it, because it's depressing. And so it somehow cheers you up. So I asked Steve to make a list of these 5 people. We may overlap, but we want to recommend that. We've recommended books. We've recommended movies. We always get feedback on it. So we get criticisms too. If you hate a book or hate a movie, we're going to give you 5 country singers you've probably heard of, but if you haven't, you've got to check them out because they're really, really good. And Steve, give us one of yours.
Well, Sean, we talked a little bit about before the show about Chris Stapleton. I'm a big Chris Stapleton guy. About 1/3 of his stuff is country, 1/3 is rock, 1/3 is blues. But also, if you want to kind of go into the archives a little bit, before he became a famous solo artist, he was the front man for a band called the Steel Drivers, which is just as pure country as you get. And I highly recommend it.
I'm going to look that up because here's my Chris Stapleton thing. I love him and he's huge. I love his voice. I do not like his songs.
Oh,
and he's on all my playlists. And I've tried to force this on me. My son Seamus makes fun of me, and he should. But I just find myself skipping over his songs. Like, I love his voice. I don't like his music. So I need to check out his old school stuff. I feel like I need to speed it up. Like it kind of drags. I feel like he's trying to put us all to sleep.
It's that blues element to it. And I'll say when my wife and I, for her birthday last year, I got Laura tickets to see his show. And the songs that I liked the least on the, I guess, I don't know if you still say on the CD, I'm not sure, but like the CD version of the songs, the ones that I didn't like were the best ones in concert. So I think he's a really good, some people will say he's not flashy enough, but he's the music is just solid. And I think you'd like it more in person.
Yeah, he's great. I got to recommend John Party. We just gave him a shout out. All of his music is fantastic, but there's an unknown song that got me hooked on him that I think everybody in our audience would love, and it's called Old Hat.
Oh, that's a good one.
That is a good one. And I didn't really like him or wasn't paying attention. And Bridget, my teenager, was like, he's great. He's like taking country back, like old school. And then Old Hat came on the radio and I was hooked. So, and then all of his other stuff is so awesome. And he's definitely had some heartbreaks and women leave, and he's ordering more whiskeys and all those kind of themes. But Old Hat is great. Old Hat is a great country hand over heart song. If you've never heard of John Party, was wondered if that's his real name. All right, Steve, what's another one?
So I'm going to go with one probably most people haven't heard of, but this guy, he made his way into my playlist, and every time a song comes, I'm like, who is this? This is awesome. It's a guy named Cole Cheney, and when we talk about fiddle, he's got a lot of fiddle here. This is kind of like a little more rootsy. Like I like the 1860s country music, not even the 1960s. I like some of that old stuff that they were, playing while they smoked ribs in Appalachia and didn't have electricity. Like I love that stuff, and this guy kind of gets to the heart of that to me.
Oh, that's great. I've heard of him. He's very good. Another one, he's big, but people just, we have an older audience, and I mean older than us, not old, but 40 Days for Life is generally a little bit wiser, I should say, more experienced. Luke Colmes. I'm amazed at how many people still don't know who Luke Colmes is. And he married his high school sweetheart. He's a big guy from Georgia. Awesome songs. Is it Long Neck Ice Cold Beer Never Broke My Heart? I mean, that's a golden song.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And as my son Peter says, if you look at him, he's not like we're checking out dudes here, but he's not an attractive man. I think anyone can see that. So he's got that credibility. He's not
Brad Pitt. He's not
No.
Brad Pitt. And he married a beautiful woman. He married his high school sweetheart. So, that's
if you're worried
that's
the record executives in Nashville are just like manufacturing guys with the algorithms, this is not that guy.
But you know why, because he can just straight up sing. I mean, he is a phenomenal, he's probably the best musician in this whole list, even more than Chris Stapleton. I mean, Luke Colmes is just unbelievable. Great singer and great musician.
He was number 3 on my list too, so we have some overlap there. So I'll skip straight to number 4 here. This is someone who's pretty well known, but out of the spotlight a little more in recent years. But I'm a big fan and listen a lot to Alison Krauss in Union Station.
Yes, very good. Very good, Steve. Yeah, that's a great suggestion for the audience.
Yeah.
Since this is a controversial movement that we're part of, and we're a controversial organization, and today's topic is controversial, I'll give a controversial music artist that I just can't stop listening to this guy. His music, I hated him when he first came on the scene, because I listened to one song and I was like, I don't like it. But Morgan Wallen, I mean, just hats off. He's on fire. I think he only has 3 albums, but they're all just, don't quote me on that. But his songs are just, it's addicting to listen to him. I don't know what he does. It's something about the rhythm. But he still has that redneck twang, and you're convinced. I always make jokes. You're just, to the older kids, you're just convinced he's actually living his songs. Like George Strait has a famous quote where he said it, my life's an illusion when I'm on stage. Like I sing my songs, I don't live them. My real life is at home with my kids. I think Morgan Wallen's the opposite. I think he lives these. I think he is actually drunk and sad in his apartment on Friday night because his woman is with another dude. I'm totally convinced of that.
You can tell which artists are really living their music because the same themes come up. Like you mentioned John Party, and he has like a few too many references to boots in his hit songs. Like I love it and everybody should love it, but like you can kind of tell this is from the heart. And Morgan Wallen, there's a lot of references to East Tennessee. And so you can kind of see like this isn't the producer putting this reference in here. He really loves East Tennessee.
And he has been dumped a lot, and as a result has become highly intoxicated. I think that's another theme that has happened to poor Morgan a lot.
There's something to be said. You can tell the country singers who really should have taken a theology of the body class because they're just lingering a little bit too long on these relationships that probably went too far.
I think so. And so, but here's what happens. You got Pat Green. Morgan's on his way towards this. This definitely was the story with Garth and Kenny Chesney, where there's a little bit of wild side, and then there's the conversion, and you get all those sweet songs. Alan Jackson has a lot of songs like that. His early stuff, he's out womanizing and honky tonkin'. Trace Adkins, same thing. And then later on, they like get married, they have kids, and then they sing all the true love stuff. That's the difference between Luke Colmes. He got married so young and had kids young. He's got a lot of beautiful, heartfelt, romantic songs about his wife. He's got a few where like he's been dumped just because you're in country and you got to have those. But drinking beer as cold as you, like that's great. But I think there's kind of a conversion point. I put Morgan Wallen in the category with Kenny Chesney. Like, I think, and somebody had told me, I can't name them on the podcast, but they live in Franklin, Tennessee, outside of Nashville. And they were like, no, Kenny Chesney like still goes out drinking with his high school buddies, you know? So this was years ago. I don't know if he still does that, but I was
this is something not worth.
I believe that.
It's something not worth getting too deep into on the podcast, but we had a robust argument at headquarters like a week or two ago about whether Kenny Chesney was pro-life enough or not.
I know, and he is. We don't want to drag this in.
We're on the same side on this one.
we were against a person who will remain nameless, but she was on the wrong side. That's a great song. There Goes My Life. It's like we've heard that story at 1 billion pregnancy center events. I thought my life was over. We were gonna have an abortion. We chose life. I thought all my plans were canceled, and now we have this beautiful girl, and I can't imagine life without her. That's like every single pregnancy center dinner. It never gets old. It's always awesome. And Kenny Chesney has an entire song about it called There Goes My Life. Look it up. Beautiful song. Beautiful song. So that person was really on the wrong side of Kenny.
And of history.
And of wow, we're getting deep here. Hey, by the way, the Stapleton thing was steel drillers?
Steel drivers.
Drivers. All right. I have one on my list, but it's just I only have one more. What do you have?
The last one on my list is, have you ever heard, Sean, of the Turnpike Troubadours?
No.
They are not really on radio, but they've gotten kind of big in concerts. And
it's not a wizard, it's a Willard.
Yeah. Their shows are like selling out all over the place. They just haven't gotten a really great radio presence, but they have a particular song that I really like, which is essentially about a guy who like marries, he's engaged to get married to a city girl. And the whole experience of going to the city, he gets bad at hunting. And so he tells his fiance, go on to hell, honey, I'm going home. And then he gets his hunting mojo back again. It's as country as it gets.
I love
Great
it.
fiddle.
What's it called?
The band is called Turnpike Troubadours, and the song is called The Bird Hunter.
Definitely looking that up.
It's like 7 minutes long. You'll love it.
Oh my gosh, yeah. That's the other problem is Spotify kind of ruined that, where somebody explained it to me, where your song needs to be like no more than 3:30. So you have these short songs. They have like 2 verses, then it ends. And it's all because of Spotify. Okay. My last one is, it's not new. It's just to bring his name up to aggravate Steve. And it's Luke Bryan. Luke's got his issues, but Country On. Go listen to Country On, everybody. Listen to Country On and email us at podcast@40daysforlife. Your explanation to me about why Steve Carlin hates, loathes Luke Bryan, including that song. You don't have to like everybody. There's people I don't like. But that's a great song, Country On, by Luke Bryan, and Steve's bigotry, much, I might add, like the DOJ's bigotry towards pro-life people, his bigotry has blinded him to the greatness of that song.
If I were like isolated in Siberia and I were raised without access to a radio or a Spotify or a CD player, and someone's like, "Hey, come listen to this song," and they put their boombox or whatever, and it was Luke Bryan, I would smash the radio with a hatchet like the soup Nazi in Seinfeld.
And just go back to Siberia and be like, I don't even want to go back to Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm just going to live out here in the snow.
It's the most extreme statement I could think of, so I made it. I took my shot.
You did good at it. It's pretty remarkable that you would choose a life in the desert and the snow and the ice storms and everything else, and over listening to a Luke Bryan song. So, wow. Okay, we will transition from that.
The fun is over. We had to get it in while we had the chance.
We had to get it in, but hey, we gave y'all some great tips in our opinion. Feel free to write us back and say, hey, that song was awesome. This song was terrible. I love whatever. John Party. I hate John Party. Y'all are geniuses. Y'all are idiots. Do all that at podcast@4daysforlife.com. Okay, so one of the positives, there is no positive to war, but you see how quickly the world can change. And sometimes when you see like the whole thing, this happens in our own life, right? A tragedy happens or a serious situation happens, and all of a sudden things that you thought you were going to spend your week or month or year on are no longer a priority. Or commonly, things you worry about and think are a big deal, no longer you care less about. You got bigger fish to fry. And war certainly does that. It reminds us how quickly the world can change. Therefore, it reminds us how quickly we can change. But what it ultimately does is reveal a lot about nations, about people, how people comment on war, on tragedy. It can be flippant. It can be naive. And there's no real best way to do it. I feel, Steve, with Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians, there are an amazing amount of people who have botched this and have tried to be the war expert, which we are not, nor will we try to be. And that has revealed a lot about what we've seen in the culture war, particularly post-Roe, because post-Roe, we really couldn't predict that the left would encourage violence. That may be very naive, and I'm sure people are thinking that after 2020. But I don't know many people that would have said, no, they're going to have 400 people outside of Kavanaugh's house, which is illegal, and they're just going to let them stay out there. The government will let them stay out there. I would have never predicted that. I would have never predicted that somebody would have gotten caught trying to get into Kavanaugh's house loaded with guns with the intent to assassinate him and his family, and that's kind of a news story and then it goes away in 24 hours. I wouldn't have thought that. I wouldn't have thought that the pregnancy centers would be banned in so many of these states, Pennsylvania, and firebombed. And so that whole, I didn't see this coming, this is where we are, I think we're definitely seeing it with this conflict, Steve.
Yeah, it's a wild thing, and it really comes down to, I think, the fundamental question of our civilization should probably be the fundamental question of every civilization is it ever okay to kill an innocent person? And for so many centuries, perhaps across Christendom, you could count on any person of goodwill, any decent person to say, no, it's not okay to kill an innocent person, whether they be unborn, whether they be sick or elderly, whether they be Jewish. No, you don't kill people. And we knew that. And from time to time throughout history, we forget it. And this seems to be one of those times in which we have forgotten.
And we're going to do a future podcast on the very dangerous trend the last few years, and now just out with it, of hating Jews. Somebody's trying to make hating Jews great again. And we are going to do a whole podcast on that and how things develop, do a little bit of history. So we're obviously going to touch on it here, but just know if we're not emphasizing that enough for you in this podcast, because we're doing an entire podcast on it. So a little disclaimer. Okay. So this happens. Hamas attacks Israel. They level a skyscraper, a condominium. They start dragging women around in the streets. They rape women. They behead babies, Jewish babies, doing all this while praising Allah. And it is classic Muslims hate Jews, and Palestinians hate Israel, and the entire Middle East hates Israel. They have for a very, very long time. And nobody's been able to fix it. Nobody's been able to cure it. America's been our closest ally, besides maybe Britain, in the history of the United States. Israel would have been leveled long ago without the United States as their ally. If we turned on them, they'd be finished. But everybody knows it's not that we want it, it's that we just know it. That when you're at war and you take all the precautions because you're going to bomb something, and you want to reduce the number of civilian casualties as much as possible. Everybody pretty much does this except Islamic terrorists, where their goal is civilians. But everybody knows that doing that, you're still going to have civilians that die. That is at a different level than terrorists going in, dragging women around, raping them, and cutting the heads off of babies, and then kidnapping. We still have Americans that were kidnapped as of the recording of this podcast. And just the targeting of the Jews because they're Jews. And I think, Steve, now in 2023, all this is on camera. It's horrific. We're not showing any of the footage in case you're watching this on YouTube and you're like nervous, is this going to pop up? I've been doing a lot of media interviews on this, and they'll start showing the footage when I'm talking, and I don't know the footage is up there, but it's brutal. It's brutal. But we in the West come from the moral high ground of we dehumanize our babies. We've beheaded our babies. Kermit Gosnell was doing that. Abortion facility was raided in 2010 because of that. Planned Parenthood didn't condemn that. They mentioned that he was a criminal because, in fact, he was. But they never said, we don't need abortion through all 40 weeks, or we don't need to deny health care to a baby after he or she survives an abortion. That's what was happening with Gosnell. They were surviving the abortion, and he was cutting their heads off. It was no different than Hamas. Absolutely no different. And the reaction, Steve, that somehow we have this moral high ground against Hamas, which in many ways we do, but in many ways we don't. That's why we're seeing so much support for Hamas in the United States.
Yeah, if you can accept the execution of an innocent child, and that's really a redundant thing to say, right? Or an innocent child. All children are innocent. Like, all babies are innocent. They haven't done anything wrong. They haven't, they're not racist. They're not sexist. They're not any kind of is. They haven't committed any crimes. Like, babies are innocent. And if you tolerate violence against a baby, there's nothing you won't tolerate in the name of your goal, whatever goal it is: social justice, racial justice, reproductive justice, whatever sort of justice you want to talk about. If that becomes your end goal, such that you're willing to do violence against a child, there's nothing you're not willing to do. No amount of harm. There's this trial going on right now, this like crypto guy, this Sam Bankman-Fried or whatever his name is. And he was a utilitarian, and whatever brings the most happiness to the most people is fine. And he said, if I could flip a coin and it lands heads and it destroys the world, and it lands tails and the world will be at least more than twice as good as it is now, he would flip that coin because the odds are you start making that cold calculus where you're willing to do harm to innocent people, particularly children. Anything goes. It is complete bloodshed, and nothing other than power has any sway or influence whatsoever.
Yeah, and there's really with Hamas and Israel, there's 5 things that have come up with the culture war and sort of revealing this. And the first one I just covered, and that's the professors, the stupid Harvard students, which there were only 30. We don't want to cast Harvard to hell completely, to be fair, although who knows how many actually support this. But the media and members of Congress and everybody else basically remaining neutral or outwardly in support of the Palestinians and Hamas. And as I just pointed out, one of the revelations with them saying they are beheading babies, and that was a point that Netanyahu made, that the Israelis made to show we're at war. This is what they're doing to us. Ghaznel did that. We've had numerous reports of a lot of abortionists beheading babies. And you can say, yeah, but Sean, in America, we're like, that's insane. That can't go on in the United States. No, we're not. No, we're not. We have legislators that refuse to vote for bills that would give health care to a baby who survives an abortion. We have an elected governor who went a step further, and I guess in his mind thought he was doing us a service, where he described that process of infanticide on the radio as if he's doing us a favor, like he's telling you how to do a root canal. He's telling you how the baby girl will die on the table. We had Cuomo enthusiastically light up the Empire State Building, celebrating abortion through all 40 weeks, no doctor required to do the abortion in the New York bill, and the denial of health care to abortion survivors. So it's interesting, Steve. I thought about, you see the news coverage, and it made me think of Melissa Ohden and all these abortion survivors. And there has to be part of them looking at this going, the West has lost so much moral high ground. We just have over the last few hundred years, but especially 50 years. I mean, when you start introducing abortion and even contraception, and you're literally killing your own children and bragging about it. You're redefining marriage. You're doing all these things that you said you would never do because you were civilized. You just lose so much credibility. So that's the first point, is that no, I'm not saying America is Hamas, but I am saying we have forfeited a lot of moral high ground. And when everybody runs out and says they're beheading babies and Hamas is evil, we fully agree. But somehow at home, we ignore that. We ignore that. It's not the nuts with the bullhorn. I just named governors and a political party that has endorsed this in a post-Roe world and said they will not answer the question. When should we limit abortion? And it's never. It's absolutely never. And that's a sobering thing. So that's the first point that we make. The second point, Steve, is the violent targeting of innocent civilians is always a crime. But in this situation, there's a little bit of, yeah, but they were Jewish babies and they're colonizers.
Yeah, settlers and colonizers and whatnot. And I suppose that sort of draws back to the point I made a moment ago, which is innocent baby is a redundant phrase. Like there is no baby that has colonized you. There's no baby that has kicked you off of your land. I think in the Judeo-Christian worldview, we're somewhat alone in this idea of individual dignity. In every other culture, whether it's like ancient paganism, modern socialism, it's sort of this hive approach where you're like part of the hive and you exist only to the extent that you serve the state or the greater good or whatever. We alone have this notion of individual dignity. And you can see that paganism is kind of retaking the world right here, because it's like, oh, okay, well, sure, maybe the baby's innocent, but the baby's part of the tribe. The baby's part of the hive. And it looks like some of this Old Testament stuff where you just see, cultures fighting each other to the death, trying to wipe each other out entirely. We're going to go and kill every Jew because you don't like what happened in 1948. We're not here to talk about what happened in 1948, but what we can say for sure, and everybody of goodwill would certainly have to agree with the fact that a baby is always innocent. A baby never deserves to die. And, Sean, we've made a point, I think, at 40 Days for Life. I have, everybody at 40 Days for Life has made a point that we try not to make everything about abortion. Like, this bad thing happened in some city. Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? Bad thing happens every day, 3,000 times in America. We try to avoid that. But I think here, the parallels are too direct. They're cutting the heads off of babies. Maybe it's in the womb. Maybe it's in the crib in the Holy Land. But the actual action is the exact same.
And they're using that to appeal to the West for help, which Israel should do, because the beheading of children is horrific. But that's why we're pointing it out, is that their moral outrage and their, hey, come help us kill all these horrible terrorists, is they're cutting the heads off of babies. And we have to be honest enough as a country to say, well, what state are they in? Are we in New York? Are we in Mississippi? Because that may be illegal in Mississippi. We have to realize what we are and what we aren't. And I should have emphasized that earlier, Steve. It's a great point. I hate when people make everything about abortion. And I know that sounds funny because we talk about it all day. But I do. 40 Days for Life, we have, I feel, done a great job at not attaching our thing onto every little news story that happens throughout the day. And there are people who do that, and some of them do it well, some of them don't do it well. But it's like, hey, this new fad that popped up, I'm going to attach my cause onto it. And I hate, that's what the woke people do. That's why everything's about race. Everything's about being a homosexual. Everything's about being trans, because they just latch on to something. And if you say that you like coffee-flavored Bluebell ice cream, somehow you're a racist. And you're like, where'd you come from? It popped out of a tree. Told me I didn't like the ice cream that I really do like, or I'm a racist because of it. They just make everything about their thing. I think this is different because it's a direct correlation, and it highlights our hypocrisy, and it highlights our inconsistency, but it also highlights our consistency. And that we'll get to the consistency after we get to the inconsistency. The inconsistency, Steve, that this highlighted. And I do believe this is the comical part, the only comical part of the podcast. I know, Steve, at your house right now, I could go outside, and if I look at your house, I will see the Palestinian flag and then the gay flag. I know that I'm going to see that. The rainbow flag and the Palestinian flag, that's outside, because you are in solidarity with everyone on earth, and you have no conflict with anyone.
I have all the wristbands. Every wristband is there.
Yeah, like long sleeves.
Yeah,
you won't even roll your sleeves up for us. I can see it because it's just like, oh, wristbands. You look like the Michelin Man.
Yeah, I try to flex and rubber just goes flying everywhere. Yeah, it's a very bizarre thing. Did you see that meme that was floating around? I try not to be a big meme guy because I don't think they're like the most sophisticated form of discourse, but you see you see the lady with like the Hamas flag and the pride flag, and then like the Hamas guy, like terrorist dude, his eyes start welling up with tears. And then they go like frolicking off in the meadow. And then like the fourth and final frame of the comic is you see the woman's head like rolling off. Yeah. I think that's
it's terrible to laugh at, but it's so true. They kill homosexual people. That's what they do. And we don't want that, by the way. I mean, that's the great irony is, you know, if they say go round up all the homosexuals and execute them, the only group that has an objective moral authority to go against that is Christianity.
Yes.
And the relative Christians may just go along with it because they're just like, well, I guess so, because they just go along with whatever's going on in the world. But objectively true or Orthodox Christianity is the only hope for homosexuals in that scenario, because we're the only ones that look at them not for their behavior like they want us to, but for who they are, made in the image and likeness of God, and through natural law, and not through their habit of the day or their sexual preference, which changes constantly or whatever. Because that's a behavior, disordered behavior, in our opinion. But a behavior nonetheless, and they are indeed above that and more than that. And they don't have that in these Islamic countries. You'll get killed. So when you have a Palestinian flag and a gay pride flag, that should be really either comical or offensive to homosexuals.
It's a pretty wild thing, and it took me a few days of trying to read about this to figure out what in the world is going on. Why in the world do we see these two flags next to each other over and over and over again? And the best explanation I found is that it's this concept of intersectionality, where like everybody except for like the white European colonialists, everybody else is an oppressed person in some fashion. And this is actually part of what led my wife to not be a leftist anymore back when we were in college. Is she realized, she's like, you know what? I get the voice because I'm a woman, but if I were talking to like a gay woman, then I would no longer have the right to say anything. And so that's why, like, I think you now have like, but I'm a left-handed trans lesbian minority who's suffering from the effects of climate change. Like, everyone is in this race to become the most oppressed person. And the only lens they have for seeing the world is like oppressor versus oppressed. And so if you look at the Palestinian people and say that they're oppressed, suddenly the Israelites, or Jews worldwide, apparently become the bad guy, and it's open season on them. That's the only way, I guess, that this makes sense, but it certainly can't be consistent, because let's say that, Hamas takes over the world. The people who are out celebrating Hamas right now are, as that meme suggested, going to be on the chopping block.
I think there's another point to that, which is the hatred of religion.
Yes.
With the exception of Islam. So it's totally acceptable to hate Jews. It's totally acceptable to hate Catholics. It's totally acceptable to hate evangelicals. And some of the more liberal Protestants are a little bit more tolerated, but overall people hate them too. So you have this awkward situation right now where you have Catholics or Catholics, evangelicals and Protestants, and Jews in one corner. Okay. Then you have white liberals and progressives and woke people with Islamic terrorists in the other corner. And I would have never thought that would happen. I would have never thought we'd be at a place in the United States where everyone would come out and say, we stand with Israel. Because that has been a unifying American theme. And of course, there's always the nuts that are like, down with Israel. But that's been a minority, and they've gotten the look like, hey, remember Auschwitz? Maybe want to chill out over there. And there's that walk on eggshells thing of you can't say anything about the Jews and all of that. And now they're actually being murdered again. And people are like, yeah, I can see both sides. I think I understand, and you're like, no. Iran said they wanted to kill every Jew on earth. So this isn't like a new thing where they're like questioning Judaism. There's a history here, and a very dark one. And so America's always been united on that front. And I'm just surprised to see the great hatred and the somehow sophisticated approach. And look, we know there's two sides to it, but one, I think, has always had the moral high ground, and that's been Israel. But when, if you're pro-Palestinian, you're saying, hey, you're crazy. You're an idiot. In 1948, they essentially did these death marches, and they drove these people out into Gaza. There was nothing there. And, the Israeli army, put these people out there, and they were on the outside, and then they monitored them and treated them like they were, criminals. And that you can go read about 1948. It's very true in a lot of ways, but that is a completely different world than we live in now. I mean, a completely different world. That was right after World War II. You look at the response of the Germans, you look at the response of the Japanese, and what America and England did. Dresden wasn't exactly our greatest moral moment. And we just don't have Japanese people doing terrorist acts in New York City because we nuked Hiroshima. And I think if they did, a lot of people would agree with it, frankly. But Hamas raping Israeli women for what happened in 1948 is a stretch.
Yeah, 100%. And it's frankly why we acknowledge and not approve those acts of violence that have taken place against abortion providers. We admit that there have been cases in the 80s and 90s where violence has been directed toward abortion providers. And we don't go in and say, by any means necessary to end abortion. No, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. And there is just war. But again, against children, that's not it. Against babies, that's not it. Those babies were not around in 1948. So we've got to get our act together on this to be able to judge it, I think prudently and in a reasonable fashion.
Yeah. So that's we started this by saying that's kind of the comical part is the gay connection, but it's like hey, I'm liberal. Whose side am I on? The Palestinians. Great. And they have no idea what they're getting involved in.
There's this. Everybody likes to beat up with good reason on the year 2020 because of COVID and George Floyd and America burning and everything. But it doesn't speak very well of 2023 that here we've got for the first time, the Nazis covered up the Holocaust. Here we have people openly celebrating and calling for a new Holocaust. And it's the first year where we've seen the justification and celebration of a school shooter. Something is wrong, Sean.
Well, they deny it still. Many Arab nations deny the Holocaust. A lot of Iranians deny the Holocaust. And I know we're going to do a podcast on it, but I went to Auschwitz, and it's interesting at Auschwitz, and it's interesting at the DC Museum. But the DC Museum, you're in America. At Auschwitz, I realized how many Holocaust deniers there are in the world. First off, you have to go through metal detectors, and it kind of hits you like people try to bomb this place and try to attack it. And they've had attacks there, which is crazy. But they are overly, in my opinion, but I don't deny the Holocaust. But there's a little bit of a, hey, this really happened, y'all. And it's like, of course it did. This is awful. This is sad. But they have certain parts in there where they're giving you these details, and it's like, and that proves this happened. And it's not like defensive. It's just, hey, in case any of y'all, you yourselves or one of your kooky friends believes this didn't happen, remember this point here. It proves that it did. You can't fake this or forge it. And I just remember thinking how ridiculous that they have to do that. But it's just very real. And the idea that you would not, I'm not saying America needs to go to war. We're not going to get into all that because we've had a bad recent history of just going to war for going to war and just policing the world. And it works when it works and it doesn't when it doesn't. But that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying I don't know how you side with Hamas and the Palestinians. And I think that reveals the great sickness in our culture, given the timing and the context of these heinous acts. So, okay, the next point, moving on from the flags side by side, we'll get off on that. This has real implications, Steve, because these people hate Jews, but they also hate Christians. They hate Catholics. And they hate any morality or religion that tells them they're false, which is what the Catholic Church teaches, that Islam is a heresy. And they teach us, they have a similar teaching. I don't think they use the word heresy, but you're officially like a heretic. It's false teaching.
An infidel.
You're an infidel. Yeah. And we're the infidels. And how do you deal with the infidels? And Hilaire Belloc, Steve, shout out to him. Great Catholic author. He has a great book on Islam. Actually, it's a chapter, Steve, on Islam. The book is entitled The Great Heresies, which I highly recommend, actually.
It's a great book.
Sure.
I've got a friend who's a theology professor. Knowing my temperament, he said, Chesterton was an optimist. Belloc was a pessimist. You might want to stick with Chesterton.
Hilaire Belloc is a clearer writer than Chesterton. I believe his dad is French and his mom is English, or his dad is German and his mom is French. I can't remember. He's 50-50. And it comes out in different parts of his writing. But anyways, The Great Heresies, great book. And he definitely would be canceled now. Thank God he's dead, not living through all this. Okay. But they do. They hate Christians. They certainly hate Jews. And all of this garbage that say this has nothing to do with hating Jews is just that. And it's not because we see Hamas saying death to Jews. It's because we see people in Houston and Times Square in Chicago and LA going to these marches saying death to Jews. Like what the hell? I mean, that is, you mentioned 2020. This is a joke compared to 2023. We're in our US cities. We have people saying death to Jews. Did you see the footage of the kid in New Jersey, the Jewish kid eating his lunch, and all these kids come up to him and start pushing him around, and then they take him off and they beat the crap out of him. We learn nothing from the 1930s and how this stuff escalates. And if you think it's isolated to Jews, you're extremely naive. When we see them, heck, look at us. Look at them banning 40 Days for Life because you have a pro-life opinion you can't stand in this public right away. Look at Mark Houck, his house raided by the FBI. It's unbelievable. And it's not because he secretly was, pushing heroin out of Colombia. We thought, well, maybe they'll go in and we'll realize we didn't know Mark. Mark's a global drug lord. This had nothing to do with his time as a 40 Days for Life volunteer. Maybe that'll come out in trial. No, it didn't. It was because he was pro-life, and that came out, and that's why he was acquitted in an hour. So I think that is the most dangerous thing, is this coexist nonsense is just that. This woke movement is just that. And the acceptance of the hatred of Jews shows, Steve, that the woke movement is nothing more than a disingenuous, unauthentic load of crap.
And this is why I say, if they're willing to support the slaughter of babies to further their aims, there's nothing they won't do. And the only thing right now that limits them from treating you or me or any Christian the same way here in America is that there's restraints in place. Like, we have a government that will prevent it. There's not, I guess they don't have the sufficient arms in the country. I don't know what it is, but 5 miles from my house, there was one of these pro-Hamas rallies calling for the extermination of Jews. 5 miles from the house that I record in right now at this moment. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. It's not far. The barbarians are inside the gates. And that's what really makes it sort of frustrating when not frustrating, but terrifying. You see, like, the Black Lives Matter chapters putting out their pro-Hamas flyers with the guy in the hang glider, because of course the hang gliders were used to attack the people at that music festival and take hundreds of casualties. The same rhetoric that is being used to support the beheading of innocent children is also the colonizer, the white man, all these terms. They're also used against pro-lifers, against Christians, against all sorts of different groups in our society. And it just seems, I don't understand, if you extend their rhetoric to its logical end, they'd like to come after you or me the same way they came after those Jews in Israel.
Yeah, they're very us and them, and us versus them. And this is why I hate the rhetoric of the land is stolen and all of America is a fraud. And I guess we need to give everything back to the Native Americans or work out a deal, but you're on stolen land, which everybody's on who's alive in the world. Land just switches possession. It's brutal. What we did to the Native Americans is horrible in a lot of different ways. But this whole thing of like, even though we didn't do it, Steve, my great-grandparents came over from Ireland years later. But if you pay for the sins of your ancestors, then we all just need to go commit suicide, everybody in the world, because every country in the world has committed atrocities. Every people, every continent has tolerated it or done it themselves, or both. And most have done both. And that, when you make you're an unconditional enemy. Okay, you stole this land, or you colonized, or you committed atrocities. You're the same. You look like the person who did it. You're a white male, or you're brown, or you're black, or you're Jewish. Whatever you did that was horrible 500 years ago, you are responsible for now, and there's nothing you can do to change it. You're irredeemable. That's why the woke movement is the most anti-Christian movement in the history of America, because it doesn't believe that we are redeemable, that we have any opportunity of reform or hope. And the wokeness is everything is screwed, burn it down, and we'll take over. It's called, fill in the blank. Banana Republic, communists, fascists. They want to burn down the system. They want to take over, and they will make it better for you in the process. And it's very, very scary. And that's what this is. Israel is our enemy. Death to the Jews. And there's nobody going, I don't think that's a good approach. They're applauding it. And I just can't believe we're seeing that. I think it reflects our culture very accurately. It's sad to say, but it's also one of the reasons why I think 40 Days for Life has grown so much, because it's peaceful, it's approachable, it doesn't apologize, it also doesn't make an enemy of someone. We don't do this to the abortion workers. We don't do this to the abortionists. And they are actively today killing babies and proudly doing it and patting themselves on the back for doing it. We don't drag them out of their cars and beat them and say death to abortionists. We don't do it. If one of our volunteers did it, we would turn them over to the police as quick as anyone.
Yeah, these progressives have many things. They have diversity, they have tolerance, they have inclusion, they have whatever the heck equity is, but they are completely and utterly without mercy. There is no mercy. And I think that's why these progressive movements always throughout history, they turn the guillotines on themselves, right? Robespierre in the French Revolution went to the guillotine because all have sinned, all have fallen short of the glory of God. And if there's no mercy, redemption, forgiveness, everybody's going to get theirs.
Yeah, it's crazy, and it's also a power grab, and it's a sign of a lost people. When you give up on God, you put all your faith in yourself, you become God, and you jump onto any cause that wants to tear the system down. That's where we get the woke movement. That's where we get BLM. It's where we get Hamas. It's where we get, and BLM was endorsing it. I mean, I don't know if you saw that. That was just unbelievable.
The hang gliders on their posters, and I don't know. These are, at the same time, you said you never expected it. I never expected it either, Sean, but there was a part of me inside, particularly as I saw the pro-Hamas rally calling for the extermination of Israel on my campus, again, 5 miles from where I live. I started thinking, man, can you believe that my university would advocate for cutting the heads off of babies? And then I remembered, oh yeah, my university advocated for themselves to cut the heads off of unborn babies. So I shouldn't be as surprised as I am.
One point on that I think if I were listening to this, I would be thinking about that we need to say is one of the revelations here is we've let a lot of people into our country across the southern border, and we are seeing it play out in our streets with this war. But it's not just the Arab world coming here legally or illegally. It is, which they're free and happy to come over legally, but a lot have come illegally. But what about all these like white professors running around saying death to Jews? I mean, that's just like but you're not even from Gaza. You're not Iranian. You don't have this history where you were, bred to hate Jews. You're from Memphis. You're from Eugene, Oregon. You're from San Francisco. And you're acting like the Jews have persecuted you your whole life. It's just that part that's the woke part. Because I think you can see in the rally, I don't think that guy's from Milwaukee. And you can see maybe they are, but many are not. They've only been here the last 20 years, 10 years, 1 year, 6 months. Who knows? But that only tells half the story. There are a lot of non-Arabs at these rallies saying these things, and it's just a point I think we need to make.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, last one. Planned Parenthood strikes again. So Hamas attacks Israel. Israel then launches all these airstrikes into Gaza. One of those destroys one of Planned Parenthood's abortion facilities. I mean, how in the world are they going to abort all these Palestinians if Israel keeps bombing them? So, in the midst of this, they release a tragic, very heart-moving video. I know that Jewish women were raped and Jewish babies had their heads cut off, but they destroyed this room where they were doing abortions. They had destroyed the conference room. They pointed that out. That was our conference room. And they asked you to send money. This is days after Hamas did a terrorist attack on Israel. Israel retaliated, as they should have. And Planned Parenthood was so upset about Israel bombing their abortion facility in Gaza that they did a video and asked for money. Steve, they win the Tone Deaf Award of the Century. And did you watch the video?
I have not found it yet, actually. So maybe you can send me a link. We can post it on the page.
I tweeted about it if people want to. Yeah, I have the video. So I tweeted it. It's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking to, so a few Jews got killed. They destroyed our abortion clinic. Ridiculous. But that's the tone.
Yeah, I heard about it, read about it. I don't know. I couldn't manage to find it. I don't know. Maybe I'm bad at Google these days, but it's we talked about this in What to Say When, that whatever tragedy happens, a tragedy or a humanitarian disaster, floods, earthquakes, tsunamis, whatever have September 11th, whatever happens, they come out and they're looking for money to do it. You know what those people need who just got wiped out by that flood or that terrorist attack? They needed safe legal abortion. I think it comes down to that old saying where if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. They're going to abort their way out of any crisis.
Yes. Abortion is the solution. Abortion. And I have an op-ed on that that we'll post in the link to the podcast. But yeah, that was unbelievable. And I bet you they took the video down. But if you go to my Twitter feed, you'll see it. You can see the video, but it's just absolutely unbelievable. But it's not. They're united. BLM's fine with it. Planned Parenthood's fine with it. Many on the left are fine with it. And that's a new era for the United States of America where, of course, there's ways to handle it and all that'll get debated out. But just the overall general take is that America stands with Israel. That's gone. That's gone. And you've just never seen that before in our history. And I think it is dangerous for Israel and it's dangerous for the Jews. They are a sitting duck. And so anyways, we will touch on this in the future as things happen, but we wanted to point out these 5 sort of cultural connections that we have to this and revelations, really, because they obviously impact how we can bring up abortion or how abortion is brought up. And it reveals, I think it reveals the worst in us in this situation. So with that, if you want some positive, uplifting news, I mentioned this video of Joan, the 92-year-old volunteer. If you're on the YouTube page, go to the YouTube page and click on that video and watch our little tribute to Joan. She's retiring from the sidewalks for 92 years. She's 92 years old. She's been going out there for 20 or 30 years, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And also, thank you for many of you who have written in praising the devotional, the new devotional. I think this podcast reminds us of another item, the Holy Land, that we need to add to our list of prayer and fasting intentions. So if you want a little guide to do that, get the devotional. We have gotten great feedback. We said it was great, but that's just us talking. But now there's a lot of feedback saying, this was awesome. Thank you for producing it. You can buy it in bulk, I think as low as $5 a book, or you can get it for $10 or $11 at 40daysforlife.com and go to the store when you go to our homepage. So be sure to check that out and check out some of the country music that we referenced and give us your feedback on that as well. So thank you, Steve. Please rate, review, share this podcast, and we will see you next time. God bless you.